Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the panel for Starcraft 2 multiplayer, put your hands together for the Starcraft 2 balance team.
Hey everybody, my name is Dustin Browder. I'm the game director on Starcraft 2. Thank you, thank you. And it's my pleasure to share the stage with some of the smartest guys I've ever worked with. This is David Kim. Give it up for David. David is the balance designer, currently working really hard for us on Starcraft 2 and Heart of the Swarm. And this is Josh Mankey, PhD and local genius. Mankey is responsible for a lot of the stats that we use in BattleNet. He's also responsible for the ladder system that we all play in every day. So here's what we're going to do here today. We're going to talk a little bit about where we're at in balance in Wings of Liberty, what we have just seen recently, what we're hoping to see for the future, give you guys a look into the numbers and into the process that we use inside Blizzard Entertainment, and then we're going to give you a look at what's going on in Heart of the Swarm, what our current plans are for Heart of the Swarm, and I think if we do our job right here, we'll have a ton of time for questions for you guys, so please get ready, and we'll hopefully have a long Q&A session where you guys can ask us anything you want to ask us about Wings of Liberty or about Heart of the Swarm. All right, let's take a quick look at global balance and where we're at right now in Wings of Liberty. So Terran versus Zerg right now, and this is across everyone in the world, all leagues, all divisions, is pretty even, within 1 or 2 percentage points in any given area of the world on any given day. Protoss versus Zerg, all over the world is very, very even for us. So we're seeing good results in these. And then the very contentious Terran versus Protoss, strangely, is actually very even. Looking at all leagues and all ladders. I know, I'll get to it. Don't worry. It's fine. But again, remember, this is bronze all the way through Grandmaster. So some of the bronze guys are getting in there, and if they're having a better experience, that's diluting the rest of the pool. So let's take a look at the Masters balance. This is another way we like to look at the game. Obviously, we want the game to be balanced at all levels if possible. That's our ultimate goal. All the way from the bronze guy who just bought the game, all the way up to the guy who's playing here today in a tournament. We want to do the best we can. But Masters level often tells us, Masters and Grandmasters, often tells us things that we don't see when we look at that big a pool like we just showed you. So Terran versus Zerg, once again, is pretty even. This one seems to be working out for us, and this seems to be historically fairly true for us for many months now. Protoss versus Zerg does have one problem. Zerg dominance, but only if you're European. If you're anywhere else, you're fine. But if you're in Europe and you're playing, against the Zerg as Protoss, you're behind statistically by about 10% on any given day. So that's a little bit of a concern to us. Again, it's hard to know. Masters and Grandmasters is ultimately a pretty small pool. And we see big swings in these numbers depending, honestly, on who logged in on a given day or any changes that happen in the metagame in this matchup. Now, here's the scary one. You ready? Terran versus Protoss. Terran, definitely, but only if you're Korean. If you live in North America or Europe, you're doing okay. But if you live in Korea, you're behind by, again, about 10 to 12 percentage points on any given day. So these would be our two concerns going forward.
So before we get into the tournament data, I just want to point out that we do try to look at every single major tournament out there, and we do take every single major tournament very seriously. We don't just look at one tournament when making a move. So let's take a look at some of the most recent tournaments that happened. All 6 of these tournaments happened, I think, either this month or very close to this month. So it's as recent of a data that you can get as possible. So in GSL Code S, as everyone already knows, Terran is very overpowered. We're seeing a heavy Terran dominance in this tournament specifically. GSL Code A, however, we're not seeing this. We're seeing even matchups for all 3 races. IEM Guangzhou, we're also seeing even numbers, but one thing to know about IEM is while it's a very major tournament, the scale of the tournament is not as big as some of these other tournaments that we're mentioning. So it may be a little biased than some of the other tournaments. IEM New York, we saw that Zerg was dominating. IPL, even though it was a ZVZ finals, we felt like Terrans were competing fairly well against both races, but Protoss weakness definitely stood out in this tournament. And in MLG Orlando, one of our favorite tournaments out of all the tournaments out there, we're seeing even numbers here as well. So now let's take a look at our balance process by taking Protoss versus Terran as an example. So before 1.4, as we pointed out before that on the adjusted rating side, we weren't seeing too many problems except in Europe and Korea at the highest levels. But it's not the only thing we take into consideration when making balanced decisions. We do try to look at community feedback as well as pro feedback very heavily. On the community side, we were getting a lot of feedback saying Protoss is a little too weak against Terrans overall. Pros, however, were going a little stronger in this feedback, and a lot of pros were actually saying Protoss almost has no chance against Terrans, especially versus the 1-1-1 all-in strategy. So what this strategy is it's a strategy of going one barracks, one factory, one starport, opening up that way, and then saving up a lot of Marines, siege tanks, as well as Banshees, and pushing with almost half of your workers also going for an all-in attack. So after doing some more analysis, we realized 1-1-1 is a little too strong and that we should deal with it. We would... And we were also noticing that EMP might be a little too strong as well, but because of the 1-1-1 all-in strategy being too powerful, we noticed it's difficult to really gauge the strength of EMP in the late game because most Protoss players were going into the late game at a bit of a disadvantage because they have to prep against the 1-1-1 strategy every single game by really overbuilding the tier 1 or tier 2 units. So the buff that we chose was a range buff for the Immortal. We went from 5 attack range to 6 in 1.4 patch. And the reason we chose this change was because the Immortal wasn't used heavily outside of the PvP matchup before 1.4. And when choosing changes in general, we do try to go for the smallest change possible. Because we believe the current state of the game is very solid, so we don't really want to make drastic steps that would really flip the matchup in favor of the other race. So after 1.4 came out, after the Immortal change came out, we were noticing a lot of improved feedback from both community and pros. There were still some negative feedback, but for the most part, everything has improved quite a bit. And especially on the pro side, a lot of Protoss pros were saying 1-1-1 isn't a problem anymore, and any equal skill Protoss player should be able to deal with this all-in rush as long as they can prepare for it. We also saw some improved tournament results as well. For example, just last weekend at MLG Orlando, we saw Hawk pull off the crazy win. I don't think he even dropped down to the lower brackets, and he just won the whole tournament. And we also saw that in second place was MC, who was also a Protoss player. And while one tournament is not really enough evidence to really show that Protoss is okay now, we believed this small example actually helps us. So on the rating side, we're still unsure, and the reason is because every time we release a patch, the ratings tend to fluctuate a little bit, so it takes time for it to settle down. So after a couple weeks or so, we'll be able to know for sure how the ratings have changed. So currently, we're looking at a lot of these other factors. So just to summarize what we talked about before, on the rating side, we saw that Zerg was a little too strong against Protoss in Europe at the highest levels. We also saw that Terran was a little strong against Protoss in Korea alone. On the tournament side, we saw both Zerg and Terran strengths in some tournaments, but we also saw that Protoss was kind of weak in another tournament. So one of the things that we're trying to do for Protoss versus Terran is we want to reduce the radius of EMP because we believe the pure raw damage caused by EMP against Protoss is a little too strong. So for example, if you hit like 10 units with a single EMP right now, you do 1,000 damage, which is pretty much the strongest burst damage spell you have in the game. We're also looking at a more general Protoss buff so that Protoss in general can be more competitive against the two other races. So on this side, we want to try to decrease the upgrade costs, the forge upgrade costs for the level 2, level 3, and shield upgrades in general, so that Protoss just gets this just general upgrade.
All right, so that's where we think we're at right now, kind of, with Wings of Liberty. We're obviously exploring a lot of different options of things we can do going forward, and we're really watching this very closely. We have to be very, very careful. These guys that are playing here in the tournament today, the guys that are playing in tournaments all over the world, are giving us feedback that we're close to a happy place for most of these matchups, but at the same time, we're definitely seeing some stuff we want to change, so we're sort of inching up on changes as we go. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about Wings of Liberty design in general, what we're seeing when we're playing Wings of Liberty, when we're watching you guys play Wings of Liberty, and sort of the things that we want to do for Heart of the Swarm based on what we learned from Wings. So there are some core race weaknesses in Wings of Liberty that we're not all that happy with. For example, Zerg really have a problem pushing an advantage in Tier 2. If the Zerg get kind of ahead, their really one solution is to expand. That's really all they've got. And that can go badly for them very quickly if the enemy out-techs them or if they fail to gain enough board control. We have some matchups that are a little bit stale. Zerg versus Zerg is one that's commonly cited to me. I've had other people say it's not the case, but I've also had people say Protoss versus Protoss. So anything we can do to sort of shake up these matchups and try to make them feel a little bit more diverse is something we're going to try to target. And of course, we have some missed opportunities in Wings of Liberty. Some units that we were hopeful for that would do something for us, and right now we just kind of want them to do a little bit more. They're not quite carrying their weight in the game. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to fix the weaknesses, we're going to fix the matchups, and we're going to fix and or replace some units. All right, so one thing I want to remind you guys, this is absolutely work in progress stuff that we're talking about here today. It's work in progress stuff you are seeing out there on the show floor. Nothing is final here today. And as proof of this, I'm going to show you some units that didn't make the cut in Wings of Liberty. This is a Protoss Soul Hunter or Purifier. His name changed a couple of times. It's a full piece of concept art that Sammy did for us. He had a full model in game. He had about a month worth of balance go into him. He didn't make it. He wasn't good enough. We had a Protoss Spore Beast. Again, tons of art, tons of effort, tons of balance, months of work, chopped. Didn't really work out for us in the end. It was kind of a fun unit, not fun enough. And we had a Protoss Adept. He could actually throw that shield there. It was a early tier unit for the Protoss that could engage at range. Too similar to the Marine. Never found mechanics we really wanted to work for it. Despite months of work, it was absolutely cut. So one of the things that we love about coming to BlizzCon is we can get your feedback here. We can get it from you when you come talk to us. We can get it at the stations out there. We can get it on the forums afterwards. This is one of the great things about this convention for us is we can come to a place where we can put our stuff out there before it's quite ready for beta, but we can learn from you what you think is working and not working. I got some good feedback from day 9 last night, actually. It was pretty cool. And beta, of course, will tell us a ton more. Just like every other game we've ever done, we will have a full beta for Heart of the Swarm, which will give us the real deal on how these units are actually going to function in really sort of live competitive play.